This is the Converge Podcast, brought to you by the Converge Institute. Each week, brilliant minds specializing in AI, blockchain, and fintech come together to challenge the status quo and empower disruption. Sponsored by our founding council, Nakusa, BankSocial, the Texas Blockchain Council, and the Universal AI University.
Well, let's just get into it. So how lucky today we've been trying to put this together for a couple months. We got locked in, and so exciting because we got Mr. Lamont, the one and only Dr. Lamont Black. How you doing, Lamont?
I'm doing great. Yeah.
So we were just talking about, you just got back from Hawaii, and that looked awesome. So you were just about to tell me how awesome that was. Tell me how awesome that was.
Well, it brought together a lot of great things. So I was able to take my family to Kauai, which is nice.
All that.
And so my wife and kids had a good time. And then this was a credit union conference, so the Q's Symposium.
Yep.
And did 3 half-day workshops on AI. So a lot of great conversation. Got to introduce my wife to a bunch of folks I know in the credit union industry. So that was super cool.
That's awesome.
And then from there, they flew home. I flew to Maui and did,
Who are you? What a
I know. It sounds ridiculous to even say it.
No, you deserve it. You deserve it, Lamont. I mean, you do great work. And so getting people to hear your the stuff that you have and the stuff you're working on is so exciting, and it's important. And so, yeah, no, how was that? So what was the general, I know AI, you said you did a lot on AI. Was the second one AI as well, or how did that go?
So the second one was like an AI keynote, but then I was also able to do a blockchain talk. So that was Volunteer Leadership Institute, VLI, which focuses on credit union boards.
Excellent.
Yes, yeah, so that was a cool opportunity to be able to share about that project.
And man, I mean, it seems like, just from my being around, it seems like those topics are still so relevant, both of those topics, more than ever, maybe because people are now understanding what they can even do with these things, right? And I know that you've been speaking on it blockchain and DLT for years, and AI for a year and a half, 2 years, probably on that. And it feels like we're moving, or I'd love to get your feeling on what you see from these executives, from these executive teams, from these boards on, what the focus is. I've found, and we've found, and I think you've found that it's been about experimenting, but now it's actually more about implementing, like they're understanding more of how these things can be used and they want to explore deeper. What are you seeing out there, Lamont?
Yeah, I do think AI is front and center for credit unions, both leadership teams and boards having these conversations. So I think that's part of why both these conferences had it on the agenda. And I do think we're starting to get past just awareness and education. So, I've been given AI talks for over a year now, and early on it felt very kind of just reminding people, hey, this is important. This is a thing. I think we've gotten past that now. I think a lot of people are still nervous about it, especially credit union boards. And so I talk about it, excitement and fear and that tension between the two with this type of topic. But in one of those sessions, I asked people, just a show of hands, who's on which side of that fence. And it is predominantly excitement now. So I do think people are still aware of the risks and how to manage those, but I think leaning into the opportunities. And the discussion is starting to also progress beyond just use cases in a very ad hoc way. So there's, a lot of people are now experimenting with it, which is great, but it feels like these kind of like one-offs, kind of depending on your vendors or your previous relationships of, hey, we're doing this, or hey, we're doing that. And for some credit unions, that can even be a bit of a laundry list. So I would say what I bring to the table is encouraging them to think about strategy and vision, like what is your AI roadmap? How do these pieces fit together? And how are you aligning all your leaders so that you're all rowing in the same direction?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think, it's becoming a real necessity that you've got to think about this because it's permeating even deep into things like fraud. These fraudsters are utilizing AI to become more sophisticated. And if you don't have AI kind of working in a multifaceted way with agentic AI coming out, I'd love to get your thoughts on that too. And maybe even a brief primer from you on what an agentic AI is and all that. But yeah, certainly on the fraud front, do you see the same thing? I mean, I know in kind of the the circles you run in all up and down from government to financial institutions to education. Is that a big thing that's on the focus board on the map of things to watch out for?
Yeah, well, I think, AI has been used for fraud detection for years now. Those algorithms are really good at identifying anomalies, anything that doesn't fit the pattern. And so, I think several credit unions have already been experimenting with that. But to your point, now people are using AI to try and get into these systems. And so it's really going to become AI versus AI, a bit of almost like an arms race, good guys versus bad guys. And so for credit unions that are sitting on the sidelines, taking this wait and see approach, I think that's one of the risks that they're going to face.
Big risks.
Not preparing for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's a great way to think about that. And that kind of goes into some of these other things you've been doing with some of the research. Talk to us a little bit about some of the research, and then I want to go into a little bit some of the more cooler stuff you're doing with Wide Open Ventures. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's really excellent. And I love to if we could get an update for the loan since we missed it, unfortunately. Becky and I were both traveling, but would love to get an update on that. But talk to me about kind of some of the AI use cases that you're seeing, just to get people, if they're out there thinking like, where should I be kind of focused? What should I be looking at? What are those fraud we identified one? What are those other two or three that I could keep on the top of my head as an executive or somebody who's interested in the space, maybe somebody who's interested in growing in the space? What are those two or three others, Lamont?
Yeah, so I now use this framework I developed. I call it horizontal AI and vertical AI, like two different dimensions, because it's going to require organizational change. And so thinking about how does this impact across the organization and within the organization. So horizontal AI is like the touch it, feel it, user-friendly AI, generative AI. That's going to span across every department. And so I encourage every credit union to be thinking about these types of tools, whether that's, a chat GPT with certain guardrails or using something internal like a Microsoft Copilot, going beyond just a risk policy. Most credit unions now have some policy around appropriate usage of these things, but how are you encouraging your staff to use these tools as a productivity enhancer? And developing the training, the education, but also the culture to think of this as a way to empower your staff. That's certainly a major use case that's going to span across that. Nice. And then the vertical AI is like, these are the more deep dive, data-driven use cases. The one that I'm seeing most across credit unions is some kind of knowledge-based assistant. So thinking about the collection of documents, PDFs about policies, procedures, products, and services. A lot of that's often living on SharePoint, and there's some like search function on that, but that usually doesn't work very well. And so a lot of credit unions are now building some chatbot, if you will, on top of
agentic.
that.
So I think about that, Lamont, as agentic AI, and being able to have like Fargo on the Wells Fargo app for consumers, right? It gives people the ability to query data and now with Apple, they're putting local LLMs and more small language models on the device. Are you seeing? Yeah, this is kind of the agentic move. I agree with you. I think there is a big move in that arena. Is that, you see that more as like the depth is like the B2C pieces, or what do you mean by that side? Or do you mean like systems talking to systems and that kind of stuff? What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by it is starting with employee-facing agents. So thinking about your staff, how do they answer questions that they have in order to get their job done? And that could be referencing documents, which would be like unstructured data. It could be querying even things that would tie back to the core. So thinking about how do we use information to create data-driven decision-making, getting that data in the hands of the users. Data democratization, I think, is going to be part of this. And gradually, as they experiment and get more familiar with these tools, then starting to think about member-facing applications.
Absolutely.
Experience.
Yeah, because you'll turn those into basically internal agentic AIs that will talk to external agentic AIs that live on device, and then they'll bubble up data. I think that's like going to be a privacy barrier that gets figured out. These machines will talk to each other. Have you heard about them talking to each other in their own languages and stuff?
Yeah. And one credit union guy who's on the tech side has been sending me articles about like not just AI to AI communication, but AI to AI payments.
Yeah. They're already doing it.
Did other ones to do different functions. And then AI to human payments. Like there's some where it's like Ask Rabbit, and they're the ones paying the people to get stuff done.
That's crazy, isn't it, Lamont?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. But I mean, this is, if you think about it, that's a way to incentivize and decentivize good and bad data, right? Yeah. You can pay more for good data that's validated in a decentralized and kind of very interesting times, to say the least, Mr. Black.
Yes.
I think you would agree.
Yeah, and it gets into science fiction pretty quickly of, where is this headed? But that's where I also like to just bring the temperature down a little bit and say, hey, for credit unions, we just need to talk about tools and applications. Let's not get stuck in all the fear and dystopia. It's just, these are very practical here and now tools. And if you want to keep up and you want to adapt, if you want to serve your members effectively, you should really be looking into it.
A friend of mine, his name is Jeff Pulver. I've had him on the show. He started the company Vonage. He was the chairman of the board. He got this thing called the Pulver Order done, which basically allowed free communication over voice IP. It's called the Pulver Order, right? So he has this idea for things called VCons and skits, right? So he's working on how AIs will talk to each other and how information is based on the DID standard, the W3C DID standard, and these skits and decentralized identities. But he's doing a lot with that for this very reason, to open up the opportunity for AIs to talk to AIs over the internet. It's very interesting. We just saw a company launch satellites into space. We're talking to another company. I interviewed that guy who invested in Phantom Space. They're sending agentic AIs and cloud services so that, systems can, it's only 60 miles up in the air. Like, I never thought about this, but that's an interesting podcast. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing with Wide Open Ventures, because I think congratulations on that. It's a very exciting and worthy and great thing to take on, I feel like. So congratulations on that. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and what drove you to that idea, and, just the way it works, how you work in this thing. How does it work? We'd love to know. I think everybody would love to know.
Yeah. Well, it's been exciting. So we did our official, we made it LinkedIn official earlier in January.
Yep. I saw that.
And this is, Wide Open Ventures is something I incorporated a couple of years ago, but it was just in the back office. My clients knew about it because they were sending checks to Wide Open Ventures. But what really the change was expanding what I was doing. So originally it was just speaking. A lot of folks knew me as kind of somebody who gave board presentations. A lot of that was around crypto. Gradually, that's become a lot more around AI, not just crypto, AI and crypto.
Yeah.
And then with AI, also being able to expand to spend more time with leadership teams, not just boards, because it is now more about strategy, adoption, and implementation. Exactly. And so my role has shifted from just speaker to now also consultant, working with credit unions and other organizations on the implementation strategy. And so as part of that, I started bringing in more team members. So Ryan Best has been working with me now. He's the Chief Experience Officer. And then we've got an amazing team of folks who are helping support this. I've got Stefan, Gareth, and Mandy. And so really Wide Open Ventures was just this kind of one-man band a couple of years ago. And now that we're a robust team, being able to deliver more services, that's part of what we wanted to put it out there. And the term, the name Wide Open Ventures, I think captures my
it's great. Oh,
yeah, my message, my brand, the future.
yeah, it's you, right? You wide open bike lanes across the United States. I mean, you're everywhere. Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yes. And the other thing is, like, I think I want it to be inclusive. Like, the door is wide open.
Oh.
Like, if you think about innovation, a lot of people feel like, oh, it's out there, or it's
Everything's possible, right? Like I felt that when it fit you, it fit your brand, it fit what the objective is, which is anything's possible. Whether you're riding a bike or creating this whole new across the U.S. or creating this whole new financial system, it's all here to be done and had. Right away, it was awesome.
great. It's great. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I think you guys just got done doing a really exciting kind of on-site get together. Maybe describe that for us. I know you're working on a few cool things. This is one of those. Maybe would you classify it currently like as a research to action project, like understanding the what's and the hows, and then working to bring something to action on an actual implementation, right?
Yeah, I would say we are beyond that point, because we already has the proof of concept. So yeah, so what you're talking about is we hosted our first on-site event. We did it here at DePaul University. We brought together a bunch of credit unions and other advisors. And the purpose was, it was like a kickoff summit for this project we have that I call Loan NFT.
That's right.
So
Yep.
a lot of people probably know I'm kind of like you. I'm into blockchain, thinking about how we can use decentralized technology, distributed ledgers. And this is an idea that I had, a year, 2 years ago. Part of that came out of the class that I teach at DePaul University, working with some of my students. And so the idea is tokenizing loans. So what would it look like to take loans, like a car loan or a mortgage, and to put those loans on a blockchain?
Oh, yeah.
And as many folks know, I'm a fellow with the Filing and Research Institute.
Yes. We need to talk about that too. I kind of skipped that. I meant to bring that up. If we can, let's take a quick tangent there, because this is where it kind of starts or do you want to take a tangent there, or we could come back to that?
We can take a tangent. It'll circle back to that.
Yeah, it'll circle back to it. I meant to bring that up. Thanks for bringing that up. So yeah, you've been working. How cool is that? You've been working with the Filing Institute.
Yeah, it's been a great fit. So as folks might know, they have these centers, which is like a research center to focus on different topics. They hire academics like me to run those centers.
Yep.
So they started a couple years ago a center called the Credit Union of the Future, and that's what I've been talking about and working on. So it was a natural fit.
So awesome. So okay, so now come back into the NFT, mortgages, all this. And I think this has been something that's been looked at, in various ways, various layers. So what layers are you guys focused on right now? Like high level, just give us the concept of how this thing works.
Yes. Well, so one final tie back to filing, and then we'll talk about the concept.
Yeah.
So the Filing Research Institute is like a think tank, but then there's something inside filing called the Filing Lab, which is like a place to experiment with new technologies. It brings together credit unions and fintechs. And so I hosted that Filing Lab Summit back in 2023 here at DePaul. I pitched this idea.
Wow.
And so we had 5 credit unions that worked with us as part of the Filing Lab for that full kind of academic year through early 2024 into last summer. And so it's that agile process. We would, propose and build something. They would give us feedback, and then we would iterate.
Sure. Yep.
And the big idea, and this idea did kind of evolve through that process, is what would it look like to do a secondary loan market that would use the blockchain as the underlying data layer?
Yep.
Or you think about credit unions in terms of the value proposition. There's clearly a need for liquidity right now. Some credit unions are still struggling a little bit with their deposit base. And so if you want to grow loans, but you have...
Well, decentralizing finance for credit unions, right? It's allowing them to participate with more credibility back to the original underwriters and, just the whole ecosystem being more transparent and easier to invest in, right? And liquidate in and out of.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you think about like loan participations, a lot of credit unions do that either as buyers or sellers. It's a way to reallocate liquidity across.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But some of that's still driven by broker models. So, sending spreadsheets, people making phone calls and trying to find
emails of data rooms. And it's just, that's why you have to do it in tranches of 30 million.
Yes.
And it's just, it's a pain in the, and there is a real way to transform that industry. And especially with blockchain, because you get all those efficiencies of the proof of the original kind of underwriter, any subsequent sales, and you can reduce those, not only the transaction times. And, the other interesting thing, and I'm sure you guys have thought about this too, but you can also automate the servicing, right? And pay the loan people who hold those notes, those fractional notes that they're trading with each other all the time, almost real-time payouts of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here. And so, I think everyone kind of knows that the broker model is gradually on the way out. And we do have, there are market providers.
Let me just say something there. We've been looking at this for a while too. I think there's a way for brokers to be more effective and efficient because they have specialty, eventually I think AI could augment or supplement broker activity. But I do think that there's still, especially maybe in the credit union space, maybe that role for the smaller credit union of a broker, somebody they could go to that's very advanced and sophisticated and can utilize these systems to lower that barrier of entry. We think that there's probably a period of time that well into the future, where we could keep brokers involved heavily, dashboards, AI, they could set thresholds and stuff. So just some thought there.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. And let me rephrase what I said. So it's not that the role of people goes away, because I think brokers also, as individuals, bring a level of trust and relationship. And a lot of markets, no matter how high tech they are, it is still, there's a value to people working with people.
Exactly.
I think what I think will change is brokers will no longer be the information intermediary. So it's not that they are the kind of the bringer of all the data, and the only way to access the data is through the broker. I think that's going to change.
Democratize the data.
Relationships that sit on top of that.
Yeah. And that'll give the credit union the ease of going into it with smaller amounts. I mean, the democratization of data and making that stuff immutable and back to the, you could create all types of assurances from the original underwriter that they'll underwrite the percentage, all the way down to the borrowers and the lenders and all that kind of stuff. It's a fantastical world, Lamont, and it's all doable, like you said.
And one final comment that I do think is important is, a lot of credit unions, especially larger ones, are now using like a loan marketplace. And so there are providers of secondary markets in the credit union industry. I think what makes our project and product different than those is I like to think of those as centralized databases. They are basically a data repository. The credit unions are providing their data to the market provider, and then other users have to pay the market provider to access the data. Yeah. What we are building is a decentralized data system so that it's more of a platform that then you can provide access to any credit union who's participating in the market.
Is it a private blockchain, Lamont?
No, public blockchain. So we've built the proof of concept on Ethereum, and it's a smart contract that mints the tokens. The tokens.
That's probably not your long-term that's probably not your long-term solution, or what are you thinking? Like, is that your long-term solution?
So the only reason we would not use Ethereum long-term is just because of the gas fees. So I think we will.
What about privacy? I'm sure you're doing different things for privacy. Yeah, I'm sure you're considering all this stuff, but I think these are good questions to.
Yes. No, that's a great question. That was a very tough nut to crack. And I would say, working with my team, I'm very proud of the solution that we came up with. So basically, like, the data itself does not live on chain. Just the token is on chain, but then the hash of the data is linked to the token. So that's the Universal Resource Indicator, the URI. And so the data lives in a secure AWS node. And then we are basically connecting the two verifiably through the hash. And so we're using the advantages of the public blockchain as like the anchor of verifiability, but then all the data lives off chain, and it's the hash that creates that verifiable link between the two.
Of course. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, that's great. So, and that the data pool that lives on AWS or whatever cloud provider, is that decentralized as well? Or are you using some type of like Pinata node or what?
Yes.
Are we structure?
Right. Yes, IPFS. So, and then we can pin it.
Private IPFS. So you've got a private IPFS. Cool.
Well, there's actually 3 steps, and a lot of people won't follow this, but I'm sure you will. So as you know, so the reason we call it loan NFT is because the loan is being tokenized just like a non-fungible token or NFT. And so the standard way the NFT market works for these images like JPEG files is the NFT lives on chain and then the JPEG lives off chain. And typically the JPEG is stored on IPFS or interplanetary file system. The reason is because IPF is like an off-chain decentralized data network. So it's not sitting on a single server somewhere.
Right. Like a blockchain itself for files. It's another chain. So it's cross-chain is kind of another way to think about that.
Yes. So we are using public IPFS as the initial link back to the token.
Metadata, right? To metadata about
right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But then the problem we faced is once you put something on IPFS, it's no longer private in the sense of only living on your node because it's going to be stored on multiple computers across the network. So we actually have a private IPFS instance on AWS that links to the public IPFS, and then the public IPFS links to the token.
Yeah, that's very cool. Congratulations. That's really cool. So what are the benefits? We went pretty deep into the tech, probably more deeper than a lot of people wanted to go. But talk about the benefits of why something like this, where does it really start rubber meeting the road, do you think, when you're just comparing it to a marketplace? Because at the end of the day, a front end is a front end. Not too much is going to change about the front end. We're really more so talking about more access, but how does that manifest itself? Like, what is a small credit union? How do they take advantage of this, right?
Yeah, well, the simplest value proposition is just lowering cost for secondary market activity because, you have to pay brokers, you have to pay these secondary market providers, and some of those are extremely expensive and can be cost prohibitive. So it might not sound like that radical, but if we can lower the cost of secondary market activities, then that's going to be able to make credit unions to lend at lower interest rates. And so eventually that'll feed back into the primary market and will provide member benefits. But also, if you think about things like security, transparency, all the benefits that blockchain provides. So now we're not using a trusted third party, which would be this like third party data repository. We're using the trust associated with the blockchain itself. And I think that's where blockchain really shines. I often say it's a shared system of record keeping. So instead of stitching together these different data silos, we're using the distributed ledger as the data foundation.
As the stitching of together of it. We were at a thing today or a week ago, and we were talking about, there's like centralized and decentralized, and, decentralized, like every node's talking to every node, and centralized one in the middle. And then, and there is to some degree hey, you're going to have a centralized node sitting on top of a decentralized node that has the hashes and checkpoints and all that kind of stuff for a period of time, just like the Web 1 to Web 2 transition, the Web 2 to Web 3 transition. So, yeah, I think that this is, we probably need to talk about this offline, save a few minutes after this call to talk about that, because I think that's very interesting. And, we can take that offline, but yeah, that's really cool stuff, Lamont. That's really cool stuff. Yeah. I think that's
so just to finish out the narrative. So we did this kickoff a couple of weeks ago, and that was bringing in both some of the original credit unions and some new credit unions. And Like there's a guy, Kevin Sherrill, you might have met him at Altura. Like guys like this, they're already deep into crypto and blockchain. And so they're like excited about bringing this technology into the credit union space. And we've got a lot of incredible advisors who are already participating. Yeah. And so we're moving from proof of concept to minimum viable product. So we're going to run a live real data transaction through this platform, hopefully sometime this spring. And then gradually through 2025, trying to move towards, bringing this to market, possibly.
So it's going to be all the way from, just so we can understand kind of the use case here, the full use case. Is it consumer getting a loan down to loan participation, or is it tokenizing a loan that a credit union already has to participate it out? Which one is it? Or is it all?
It's really, so it is the secondary market. So we're not trying to.
Not yet, at least. Yeah. Later on, you'll figure out the front end for the.
Yes, one problem at a time. So, we're not trying to replace any loan origination system. They would
so basically a credit union would come in and say, hey, I want to tokenize 50 loans and put them on the marketplace. And then those loans would get tokenized. They'd get spun up. And then eventually you'd have something where it was a front end for them, or maybe you already have that.
Yeah, right. We go in and front end. It's like a dashboard where you can see all the loan pools. You can get the risk of the loan pool. And then if you sign a letter of intent, then you can drill down into the pool and all the loan level data is right there.
Great, Lamont. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. You should come back. We should do a demo of that. Have you done any demos to the general market of that?
Not to the general market, just to the team. But.
Well, I want to see a demo of it.
All right.
I'm very honored that you actually reached out to her. I'm so mad that we couldn't come. I had that last second opportunity to go to Davos, which was, that was also incredible.
Well, come on. That's pretty amazing.
I had to do that. I definitely want to be a part of the loan NFT thing because I think there's so many great, there's so much great foundation that's been laid. There's so many great organizations involved, and had we not been out of town, I would love to have come up there and we could cut all this out. I want to talk about this too, but I think there's a way to really blow that thing out of the water, Lamont. I think getting off of Hedera, maybe even some private, public permission, unpermissioned, like we've got some really cool new stuff that we can plug into this that'll make it lightning fast and super low cost with the same transparency and openness and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm open to those conversations.
Oh, dude, it can be incredible. And I'd love to frankly figure out how we could resell it or, we're about to launch this. We're going up on the 12th. I don't know if you remember the DeFi credit union thing we had. That's moving forward, DeFi credit union.
Okay.
So I think there's a way for us to do some of this stuff and do some really, really cool, especially on the secondary market. We talked to a couple credit unions down here, and just as recently as a week ago, big ones. Like, I'm sure that some of the ones you have are big too. I don't remember off the top of my head. I know that you were going to be there. Donald told us he was going to be there because Donald was, had just mentioned that. We had been talking to him for a couple weeks. So, yeah, super exciting. And I'd love to see how we can in any way be a part of, being a part of all this. Yep. And there's some other stuff too that I'd like to talk to you about with, I don't know, you've heard of our Converge Institute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we're doing some really cool stuff there with the Converge Institute. You guys have a good tech program at DePaul, right?
Yeah. We've got we call it CDM, School of Computing.
Okay. So I need to connect you with our program director. His name is Scotty. And we're doing some interesting stuff with hackathons. And we've already got one with We're trying to set up one in the Chicago area, Lamont, and we'll make it the Midwest one. But check this out. We already have one that's been running. We plugged into one that's been running at Harvard, MIT, Duke, and Columbia for the last 4 years. It gets like 600 people. And so we already got into we're going to do one here in Texas in May. And that one's going to be SMU, UTD, TCU, and a couple other, we've got pretty much five big colleges here, but SMU is the big daddy of that. And we've got good connections into that with the former dean and some good connections. So I think we'd love to do something with DePaul and you guys up there for an event, maybe like towards the end of summer, something like that. And we can we can do it at DePaul maybe and make you guys like the featured one. And basically, we have really good sponsors and partners that are on this thing. And so, Yeah, I think we can do something really, really cool with that.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Cool. So man, I want to learn how was it so from a personal, have you ever you've been to Hawaii before, right?
Yes.
Had you
Yeah.
take
I had never been to Kauai, and so that was a cool experience. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
about the natural beauty and being there with the family. And I posted about this, like this convergence of the personal and the professional. And people are like apparently now talking about like the blended life, not just the balanced life.
That's what it is. It's blended and it ebbs and flows, Yeah. And you're able to ebb and flow it together with your family. How cool is that?
Yeah. And not just like being able to take them to Hawaii, but like taking my wife, Tyler, to the reception, being like all these people that I've built these relationships with over the last 3 years, they get to meet my better half. And that part was really great.
Yeah, no, that is great. I've had the, pleasure of doing that a few times as well. And that's fun, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to introduce, did they meet your kids too? Did some people get to?
Yeah, we were in the pool most days playing volleyball. We even got to play volleyball with some of the guys.
Hey, there you go. Got some camaraderie going. That's awesome. That's really awesome. So how are you guys getting more like what's the way you think right now to get more credit unions? What are the triggers that need to be pulled to really start moving the credit union space forward? Because there's a lot going on with AI that can be done right now. There's a lot going on with DLT for all the reasons that we talked about today that can be done right now. What are the 2 or 3 things that you feel when people hear it, just generally, that they say, okay, I got to move to action now? And who are you talking to? Like for those out there that are, because, this is general, like you're Mr. Lamont Black, you get a ton of traction and people want to get into your head and learn, how does Lamont get all this traction? So what are those ways you're going and engaging with who at these institutions and the things you're hitting on that make them say, yes, I need to really get in and hone in on this and engage, right? And find somebody, because you can't do it all. We can't do it all. There's many vendors out there, and we've got to get our credit unions moving forward. Because I think once you engage with a credit union, you're generally trying to help them across the board, right? That's why you have wide open ventures. You're focusing on a few things as far as implementation and product. But what are those things that you're seeing? Like, what are those movement points for credit unions right now, Lamont?
Well, I think these conferences that I just did, like the Qs and the VLI, are great places to just get people thinking about this. And I think thinking about it a little bit differently. So part of what makes me unique is how I approach emerging technology, because people think of me as a futurist and a technologist, and I am those things, but I'm also very much a people person. And so it's all like, I believe innovation is all about people and what are people going to do with this technology. And so
Becky says people, process, innovation. It's all 3.
And another, like, our mission statement at Wide Open Ventures is to inspire, educate, and empower people to do great things. And so it starts with the inspiration. Like, you got to get people excited about this, because if they're stuck in this kind of fear mindset or this risk management mindset, then they're just not going to get the ball rolling. And then the education is just getting them comfortable with the fact that this stuff exists and how to start using it, and some of that like kind of base level understanding. And then the empowerment is the part I'm most excited about now, is like, okay, how do we support you to do the work? And it's not just vendor management, because a lot of credit unions still get stuck in that mindset. Like, innovation has to be internal. And with AI, what I think you would agree, I think it actually levels the playing field, where I don't have to have a massive IT department or a massive budget. It's like, these are accessible tools that you should be building stuff with today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, like, what types of, like, just to give a kind of idea, are you seeing a lot of mid-sized credit unions get excited about this, smaller credit? I mean, they're probably all getting excited about it, but how are they moving to action? What are some of the lower hanging fruits that if I'm a credit union out there today, I can think about? We've thrown a few of them out there, but just to coalesce the idea a little bit more, what are some of those things that a credit union can go out and do right now to get excited about this stuff? Is it to learn Chat GPT? Like, what is there an incremental step these people can take to do something, Lamont?
Yeah, I think in terms of where I'm seeing the most movement, it's probably in that like 1 billion to 10 billion range. So like, those credit unions that are in the middle of the distribution where they're big enough to be actively thinking about this, but they're also like hungry enough that they want to be like growing and scaling. And yeah, my kind of approach with credit union teams is, hey, so Ryan and I developed what we call like a phase 1 workshop where we come alongside a credit union and we say, okay, let's start talking to each of your executives and saying like, what is your relationship with to AI today as a concept and as a tool? And what is your unique strategy to start implementing this within your teams? Because some credit unions, they still think of it as like an IT department problem and like, oh, we need to get our IT people on this. And then they try and like push the technology sideways across the organization. Like, I think every credit union CEO.
It's like hiring a person now almost, right?
Yes. Yeah. So like every credit union CEO I talk to now, I say like, you have to take some ownership of this and you have to lead it. It doesn't mean you just give a thumbs up and say, yes, I give my implicit support to this. It's like, if you are going to change as an organization.
It's a new organizational structure, right?
Yeah.
It ain't not like that.
And like, I was talking about this in Hawaii. Like, if you think of like in like these eras of time, like the industrial era and the information era, think of this as the age of AI or entering the AI era. Like, business models have to change from one era to the next. So it's not that the credit union mission changed or the values, but the business model changes, and AI is now part of that business model. And so you need leadership from the top to make that transition.
Wow. What a fitting description for the age of Aquarius.
Age of Aquarius.
Yes, I got him to say it. All right, I won that bet on the pot. I got it. I got you to say it. I'm just done. Man, so cool. No, that's such a great way to think about this. It really is. It's not an IT push from the side, Lamont. It's a new type of organizational structure. It's a new type of company. It's a new type of executing and creating processes. And it really needs to be thought where the AIs are part of your everyday do it things in different levels of the organization. How true, whether that starts to act like an assistant, whether that's a system that's an agent in a call center. And yes.
Yeah. Like, another analogy would be like, think about trying to run a credit union in the 70s, like 1970s.
Yeah.
Versus running a credit union in the 1990s. Like, with the birth of the personal computer and the birth of office software, like literally like
databases, all that stuff, all that. Yeah.
Now every day you are using Microsoft Office or Office or 365. Like, the way you work changed from the 70s to the 90s. Like, AI is that level of change.
The way you lived, it's going to be part of our everyday. I mean, just taking it beyond business, even start to use this stuff in your everyday life, because you're going to get left so far behind if you're not using. I mean, that's one way to look at it probably, but man, yeah, it's permeating every part of our lives, Lamont.
Yeah. Well, when you say it that way, then people get all skittish. So like, but it's like, to me, like, I've also used the talking point of like, if it helps us with that lower level of work, like the routine,
the mundane
work, and the
absolutely.
Like, I think employee satisfaction is going to increase,
skyrocket. Yeah, absolutely. Nobody wants to pull together charts and reports. Talk to me really quickly. You're somebody I can go on this with. What do you think about the new deep research feature? Did you see that today with ChatGPT, or yesterday, maybe?
No.
Okay, so they released a new feature called deep research, okay? And deep research is call it a more sophisticated and expedited route to getting like research papers with charts and graphs and images. It just launched today, and apparently it's doing some really amazing stuff already. So, man, these things are moving so fast too. I think one thing that DeepSeek showed us, you saw the whole DeepSeek thing, right? Yeah. I mean, I think maybe it kind of was hoax on how much, but it's definitely way cheaper than what Sam Altman and some of these other guys are telling us that it's going to be. And in that, the kind of, orders of magnitude decrease in cost, I think opened a whole new capital race to really go towards the new wave. And you're going to start to see this stuff just explode, because with quantum coming, see, people don't think about what's happening in quantum. Quantum is actually getting smarter and powering some of this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't realize that. We think it's going to be a one-day thing, but no, it's like a boiling of the frog. And that might sound a little bad too, Lamont, but we have to get our mindset in the mindset of it's happening now. Quantum and this stuff, have you ever seen that way, like, they show how a standard computer would go through a maze, and then they talk about how a quantum computer goes through a maze. Yeah. And that's a really good way to think about this. And so it just gets to that end state of game faster, right? Faster and faster and faster. And we've got to be, thinking about how fast these AIs are going to evolve and be more, without us even knowing, be more a part of our everyday lives.
Yeah.
In institutions, really where it's going to start is the foundational work product in these institutions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just consumer, it's enterprise.
It's enterprise. And I think it starts with enterprise because, one of the things you might agree with too is that it's much easier to control the risk on with internal and enterprise versus giving the customer the access to ChatGPT to tell it anything it wants and get data into a public domain or whatever, So, yeah, man, I mean, so much to think about here, Lamont. Anything else you kind of want to leave us with as a final thought for our users? We we need you to give us a off the cuff. What am I saying? This is part of the show. Advice for whoever that is if that's credit unions, whoever that, probably most applicable is credit unions.
I think yes, these things are scary, and yes, there are risks that have to be managed, but encouraging people to lean in and experiment and literally to have fun. Like, these are, like, especially with generative AI, like, it is a creative tool, and get the tool in the hands of your people, and I think people will be amazed at what they can do. And so, to me, this is just like an exciting time to be alive. I feel so fortunate to be part of it, and I would encourage every listener to just be trying stuff on their own, encourage their people to try stuff, and see where it takes you, because the future is bright.
Well, I'm fortunate to know you, Mr. Lamont Black. I can't say any more on top of that. Thank you so much for giving us kind of everything you've been working on and going deep with us and really getting down into it. It's so exciting. Again, honored to know you. Thanks so much for coming on. And we need to talk soon for sure, Lamont.
That was good. Thanks for having me, John.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much.